What's up, everybody? Me, PJ, back again. Welcome to the first episode of a new segment on my channel. This is going to be called CD Showcase, and basically how this came about was I want to show you guys all my CDs, but I have a big collection, and I thought it would be better to just break it down into categories and show you certain categories at a time. Now, I might do in the future broken down by band, just stuff I've been getting recently, or genre. So if you have anything that you'd especially like to see from my collection, just leave a comment down below and I'll try and get to it. But today's episode that I'm going to start off with is all my Black Friday deals that I got. Now, basically, all my stuff from Black Friday finally got here, so I can show it all to you guys. Basically, how I'm going to break it up is by distro, so it's going to go alphabetical by distro, and within each distro, it'll be pretty much alphabetical by band. Alright, now to start things off, we have CM Distro. I only got one album from them, and that is Wormrot's Dirge. Now, if you know anything about Wormrot, you'll know they're actually on Earache Records, but for whatever reason, this was on CM Distro for $1, and if you've heard this album, you probably know why I bought it, because this is fantastic, fantastic pummeling grindcore. If you haven't heard this and you're into grindcore, go check this out. Now, the next distro isn't actually a distro per se. It was just a band having their own Black Friday sale that was actually conducting from the grave. I managed to get two of their albums, the ones they self-released. If you don't know much about the band, they used to be signed to Sumerian Records. They left Sumerian after two albums, released two CDs independently, and recently they broke up, which is kind of too bad. But I managed to grab their self-titled third album, which is really good. If you're into like more melodic deathcore, like As Blood Runs Black, or like At the Gates influenced stuff, definitely check this out. And besides that, I got their other one, which is called Revival of Forsaken Trials, which is the 2015 re-recording of their original demo. It was like a 10-year anniversary thing they did. In addition to the demo, it actually has both versions of the demo, so it has the old one and the new one, as well as a cover of Dr. Dre and Ice Cube's Natural Born Killers. Now, the next label I got stuff from is Face Down Records. If you're not familiar with Face Down Records, they specialize in like hardcore and metalcore influence type stuff. First album I got from them is The Burial with in the Taking of Flesh. Basically, if you're not too familiar with The Burial, they play sort of a technical death metal style of sound, and they have a couple other albums. I was a fan of their last album, Lights and Perfections. But if you're into like sort of technical death metal, I'd give them a shot. They do have some hardcore influence, so if you're just into pure technical death metal, you might not like it too much. The next album I got from Face Down is Hope for the Dying with Alethea, I believe. Yeah. These guys play a really awesome style of like progressive hardcore, I'd say. But it's extremely neoclassical and metal influenced, very symphonic as well. So definitely check these guys out. Hope for the Dying is what they're called. Definitely really cool stuff. Definitely worth a listen. The next two albums are both by the same band. If you've ever heard of these guys, they're called A Plea for Purging. First album I got is this one, which is called The Marriage of Heaven and Hell. And the second one I got is, The Life and Death of A Plea for Purging. These guys play a pretty, like, groovy style of metalcore. If you're into, like, really bouncy stuff, definitely check these guys out. They're definitely worth a listen. Alright, moving on, we have Nuclear Blast. And these guys had a fantastic Black Friday sale, and I ended up getting, like, 9 CDs. So if you're a fan of Nuclear Blast, this is definitely for you. Right, first up we have Augury with their 2009 album Fragmentary Evidence. That's what it's called. All right, these guys are like progressive technical death metal. Very cool stuff. I hear they're working on a third album. These guys really don't release albums that often. I think their first one was 2004, this one was 2009, and it looks like their new one might be next year, maybe. But yeah, definitely check these guys out if you're into like a little bit out there, progressive death metal. Definitely check out the song Jupiter to Ignite. I feel like that's a pretty good representation of their sound if you haven't heard of these guys. Right, next up we have Elvedi with Slania. This was the first album that really got me into these guys. Very cool folk metal, very Gothenburg inspired as well. If you haven't heard these guys, this is a great album to start with. And yeah, I also got another Elvedi album from Nuclear Blast. That is The Early Years. This is actually a compilation of their first two releases. We have the Ven EP and their first album, Spirit. Now, Spirit appears as it was originally recorded. However, Ven is a re recording that was made in 2012. So that actually made me like that EP more because I wasn't a fan of the original recording of Ven. But this album is definitely great if you're like me and didn't really care for that early recording. But yeah, that's Elvedi with The Early Years. Next up is some more folk metal, this time from Germany, and that is Equilibrium with Recreator. Basically, this is very epic, very like drinking song inspired type metal. Very cool stuff. Not my favorite by these guys. My favorite's probably the album that came before this one, Sagas, which I also own. But there's some good stuff on here. Also, if you get certain printings of the CD, I didn't know I was getting this one, but it has a few acoustic tracks and has one of my favorite songs by these guys done acoustically, Blut im Auge from Sagas. So definitely check these guys out if you haven't heard them. Very good like drinking metal. Right, next up from Nuclear Blast Pile is Hammerfall with Threshold. Now, these guys are probably the cheesiest power metal band in existence, so if you like power metal that isn't cheesy, or you don't like cheesy music in general, stay away from Hammerfall. But if you're like me, you like to have fun with your metal sometimes, Hammerfall is a great band to listen to. I'm not sure if this is one of their best albums, but they're definitely a fun band to listen to, and this is definitely a fun album to put on. Alright, next up, still from Nuclear Blast, is another power metal release, and this is from Rhapsody of Fire with the Frozen Tears of Angels. This was under $4, and I'm super stoked to get this, because I'm trying to complete my Rhapsody collection, and this is one of the few that I don't own, or I didn't own. There's still, like, a few more that I need to round up, but I'm getting closer and closer to having all of the Rhapsody albums, which I'm super stoked on. This personally isn't one of my favorites by them, but I kind of own most of my favorites already, and I kind of needed this for completion's sake. But it's definitely worth a listen if you're into Rhapsody and like neoclassical power metal. Alright, next up is Scar Symmetry with Pitch Black Progress. If you're not too familiar with these guys, they're melodic death metal. They also incorporate more modern metal elements like clean singing. Christian Alverstam was their singer for a while. This is their second album, so he was still in the band at this point. It's a good album. I'm not as into it as I thought I would be, but it's still pretty good. Definitely check it out if you're a fan of melodic death metal. Alright, two more releases in the Nuclear Blast pile. This is one of the few deathcore bands that are on Nuclear Blast, but Thy Art is Murder with Hate. This album just pummels and punishes you when you listen to it. It's absolutely fantastic. If you're into Whitechapel, I would definitely check these guys out. Whitechapel and like Rose Funeral and just like all the other Australian bands that are in the deathcore scene, definitely check these guys out. Alright, and lastly, finishing out my Nuclear Blast pile is an album that's really great. It's from 2004, and that is Winter Sun with Winter Sun. This is a fantastic album. This is before the whole like time debacle, which is still going on. We only have one half of time out. Where is more time? We need more time. We need a sauna. We need more time. We need more time. We need a sauna. Well, until Yari gets his sauna and more time to finish time, we have the original Winter Sun, and this is a fantastic like melodic death metal Finnish style with like power metal elements. So if you're into like Kalma and Children of Bodom and Norther and Ensiferum, this is definitely something that's for you. Yeah, Winter Sun. And lastly, this brings us to the last distro that I ordered from on Black Friday, and that is Season of Mist. So first off, to kick off Season of Mist is Cynic, with their most recent album, Kindly Bent to Free Us. Now, I like Cynic, but this is definitely not the greatest Cynic album that's out there. They've done a lot better in the past. Their first two albums are fantastic. I like their EPs as well. This album's kind of for me, but I really wanted it just to have some Cynic in my collection. Right, and next from Season of Mist is some mathcore, the Dillinger Escape Plan with Option Paralysis. Now, this is the special edition. It has an extra track, which is kind of frustratingly not actually labeled on the packaging, and it also has the weirdest digipack I've ever seen. I'll show it to you guys real quick. It's pretty frustrating to get back together, but you'll see that in a minute. Now, got the slipcase like a normal CD, then you're confronted with this thing. So basically how it works is each side has two of these folding flaps. Kind of fold them all out. If you can, they all like to fold back in on themselves. And, almost there. And you can finally kind of see the CD in there. But yeah, it has all the lyrics on these little flaps, which is kind of inconvenient to read the lyrics and stuff, and it's pretty hard to get the CD out, and I don't do it very often. So yeah, I'm not going to put this together on camera because it would take like 10 minutes. Alright, next up in the Season of Mist pile is a band that's not super well known, but if you're a fan of Keep of Kalashin, you might know of these guys. And this is Konzu with their album Anomalia, I think it's called. Unfortunately, it has this giant hype sticker, which is pretty well stuck to the jewel case. I'll take out the booklet real quick, though. Alright, that's a better look at the artwork. Basically what these guys play is a style of like progressive black metal that's very industrial inspired. It has the old vocalist for Keep of Kalashin, Thebon. He's not on the newest Keep of Kalashin record, but he was, I think, from like their EP in like 2003 through like Reptilian. He was the vocalist. And all the music is done by one guy. He was also in Keep of Kalashin like way back in 2003 for just that EP that they put out. But yeah, this is definitely an interesting release. It's not for everybody, but if you're into black metal and you're into progressive metal, you might want to give this a shot. Alright, lastly, we have the last CD in this CD showcase, and the last CD from Season of Mist, and that is Old Silver Key with, I think it's Tales of Wanderings is what it's called, yeah. Alright, if you're not familiar with Old Silver Key, they're the project of basically everyone from Druk plus Nij from Alcé. So it's a pretty big group in as far as like atmospheric and post-black royalty kind of go. But this album doesn't have very much black metal in it. It's mostly just like post-rock and post-metal, but it does have some like tremolo and blast beats, which are about as black metal as it gets. But it's a decent album. I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of like Nij's clean vocals, because he's the vocalist on all this. But I did look through the credits, and it's mostly written by the Druk guys, so it seems like more of a Druk album than a collaboration fully. But it's definitely worth a listen if you're into either of those bands. So yeah. Alright, so that's it for the CD showcase. If you liked it, leave a comment. If there's any albums you especially are intrigued by, let me know. Also, let me know what future basically categories you'd like to see for this, whether it be genre, band. If I have their discography, I might do a separate video for a band, and or labels you might want to see in my collection. Any of those things, just comment below. I'll think about it. I'll let you know if I just don't have any of it. But anyways, until next time, I'll see you guys later, and keep it metal.